Viewers, once again, the biggest story on India Upfront, and we stick with the issue of the latest clash between India and China over what really is a contested claims line. Viewers, China has a problem with India. It's an insecure country that expects total fealty from its neighbors. It has never accepted India's rise. It has always grudged our ability to project beyond our borders. It has expected fealty of the kind that Pakistan displays towards Beijing. The Chinese virtually own large swaths of Pakistan. And it expects India to behave like Pakistan. But India isn't Pakistan, and neither is it the India of 1962. India today won't roll over. It will not melt away. And neither can we be rolled over. We are far too big, far too economically stable, far too politically vibrant, and far too powerful to present the other cheek, to become a vassal or become a camp follower, a client state. China realized this in Tawang over the weekend. 24 hours after we broke the news of a clash in Tawang, Times Now is in a reasonable position now to chronicle the courage of our forces that thwarted China's latest attempt to change the status quo at the LAC. Remember, it's a claims line, it's not a border. A lot of the opposition will constantly tell you it's a border, but it's still a claims line. India has far-reaching claims into what today is defined as Chinese territory. And the Chinese have claims, far-reaching ones sometimes, into what is commonly accepted as Indian territory. Viewers, today in Parliament, the Defence Minister confirmed that our forces didn't cede an inch of land to China, at least that land that China was trying to occupy. Yes, viewers, India thwarted China's expansionist bids on both December 9 and, viewers, 24 hours later. Top army sources at the border have told Times Now how the Chinese were not just bashed black and blue, but were chased out of that area that they wanted to covet. And some of them were even dragged by the collar, virtually, by Indian braves to our side of the claims line. Defeated and pushed back, we reveal to you how a desperate Chinese army even attempted to fire in the air while they retreated. These are details that China will never admit to. Perhaps even the Indian government won't make public, for obvious reasons, viewers. But here's what we know. We know, and let me draw your attention to the graphic that has come up on your screen. We know that India had been tracking PLA troops and vehicle build-up in December for a while. They were seeing this happen. India was forewarned and had reinforcements at the LAC in adequate numbers. Even though, viewers, the mercury has fallen in these regions to the point where serving here is almost courting death. But, viewers, we were still there in adequate numbers. We know that the Chinese PLA failed to get past the Indian deployment. They were so surprised. In fact, 300 of them showed up. Now, you just think about it. If you're on a patrol, do you patrol with 300? No, you don't. You actually try to alter a situation on the ground with 300. You're doing something very different. Nonetheless, the 300 plus Chinese pelted stones, but they didn't deter Indian forces, and we retaliated and we thrashed a number of Chinese soldiers. We even, for a period of time, detained some of the alleged transgressors who at least tried to transgress. Indian soldiers heard several rounds of firing. At least 2 separate skirmishes happened on the 9th of December in Tawang, viewers. Different battalions of our forces were involved, regiments rather. This is what the Raksha Mantri said, the Defence Minister said, on the floor of the House, ruling out any fatalities on our side or serious injuries. Listen to this.
चाइना के इस प्रयास का हमारी सेना ने दृढ़ता के साथ सामना किया है अध्यक्ष महोदय, और इस फेस ऑफ में हाथापाई भी हुई है। भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से पीएलए को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया अध्यक्ष महोदय, कि हमारे किसी भी सैनिक की न तो मृत्यु हुई है और न ही कोई गंभीर रूप से घायल हुआ है।
जब तक भारतीय जनता पार्टी की मोदी सरकार चल रही है, 1 इंच जमीन पर भी कोई कब्जा नहीं कर सकता। कल अपने सेना के जवानों ने जो 8 की देर रात को और 9 की सुबह को जो वीरता दिखाई है, मैं इसकी बुरी बुरी प्रशंसा करता हूं। इन्होंने घुसे हुए सभी लोगों को कुछ ही घंटों में वापस खदेड़ दिया और हमारी भूमि का रक्षण किया है।
Well, there you are. Not an inch of Indian territory has been lost, has been ceded. Importantly, viewers, our armed forces were prepared, and only because they were prepared, armed and well organized, that India was able to thwart the Chinese who came, as the government says, well prepared to change the status quo, alter the status quo on the ground. After all, who patrols an area with 300 troops? And that's the question I posed to you just a short while ago. Ponder that point. But the point is that the Chinese have been trying to needle India for a while now. Under Xi, the Chinese economy is growing at the slowest pace it has grown in 3 decades. Under Xi, and I'm talking about Xi Jinping, businesses are moving out of China. They're coming to India. They're going elsewhere, but they're fleeing China. That's creating a vacuum, an economic vacuum. Under Xi, the Chinese are increasingly therefore worse off. There is social unrest under Xi. And for the first time, the Xi government has had to roll back policies to quell the agitation. Now, viewers, this is not a democracy where people can show up in camp and hold the government hostage, and the government, fearing repercussions in elections, will roll back. This is a dictatorship in China. And when a dictatorship steps back, you can imagine the circumstances that have forced it to do so. It's a very dicey situation in China. In such a scenario, the Xi administration is, and often, like our neighbor Pakistan does, diverts the nation's attention by instigating clashes with other countries or picking up all sorts of other obtuse issues to distract the public opinion. Nothing works better, viewers, than getting into a conflagration with a neighbor, especially a powerful one. That galvanizes the country because it gives people like Xi, who are the masters of propaganda, a handle to suggest that there is vulnerability, that we must all come together. And I'm the only person who can defend the borders. This has been done in a time-tested manner in Pakistan by dictators there who try to legitimize their hold, viewers, or even weak prime ministers and presidents in Pakistan. In fact, most often, civilian leaders in Pakistan. In fact, today, a Chinese government publication has quoted a top-ranking army commander saying that India, not China, was the aggressor, and its troops crossed over. This is precisely what I'm trying to tell you, viewers. What does this tell you? If this statement was indeed true, and our sources do tell us that the Indians, after they were harried, did not care much for diplomatic niceties. And since we have no reason to doubt that India has punched back, this statement tells you that Naya India is no longer prepared to sit back. It is actively looking to press its own claims. It is prepared to pay China back in its own coin. This marks a massive change and is the proverbial Lal Ankh doctrine that Modi had talked about. But viewers, the opposition has raised several questions, accusing the centre of being dishonest about PLA transgressions. A large number of opposition leaders have come out and said our forces are capable but lack political will. They have come out and said several things. The Chinese entered India, but NDA tried to hide it. The Chinese never entered India, viewers, and the NDA hadn't hidden it. The NDA has staked its reputation. It has stood up in Parliament, and it has gone out and said that there was an attempt to change the status quo at the LAC, and there was an attempt to transgress, which was beaten back. That's what the Raksha Mantri has said. So we can't twist the facts just because it doesn't suit our narrative. We have to accept the facts, because if you don't accept the facts, viewers, you are questioning the integrity of our forces who report back to the government and give them an exact situation analysis on the ground. Now, the opposition has every right to question the government over why it hasn't been able to, for example, deter China from its misplaced adventurism. That's a very legitimate question. Why does China feel so emboldened to constantly attack us, harry us, provoke us? Have we not done enough to raise the costs or given China an idea that there can be serious repercussions of a kind that they haven't contemplated or cannot stomach if they continue this strategy of theirs? But to suggest that the Chinese entered India would be to doubt our forces that have gone on record to make it clear that no such thing has happened. To repeatedly claim otherwise is to undermine the morale of our forces. The point is that the opposition knows that when it attacks the government, it skates on thin ice. For the attacks on government to stick, the opposition has to prove that the NDA has made blunders of the nature the opposition made when it was in power. And here's what I'm talking about. Let's go over some of these blunders. 1950, PM Nehru gifted the UNSC seat to China. Not once but twice, viewers. Till date, India has sought permanent membership, and China has stood in the way. There has been no quid pro quo. 1954 Panchsheel Treaty, formally called Tibetan as region of China. 3 months later, China violated the Ladakh border. Viewers, we gave them a big concession. We shouldn't have. 1962, PM Nehru believed in Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai. What happens? 20% disputed land is wrested from India. Aksai Chin goes. 1993, left out word existing LAC from the border pact. Set wrong precedent for 1996 pact with China. China till date redefines the perception of the LAC. In 1996, the Congress JDS signed a pact not to carry arms near the LAC. 20 of our braves clubbed to death by China and were held back by this treaty. We are disciplined, viewers, the Chinese are not. Anyhow, we can go over a large number of these points, but let me open this up. Let me ask some basic questions. And I want to begin with General Bakshi also. There's General S.L. Narasimhan, member of the National Security Advisory Board. There's Ajay Shukla, there's Tehseen Poonawala, there's Shehzad Poonawala, the national spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Let me first begin with you, actually, Shehzad Poonawala. There are certain questions that are being asked. The opposition is accusing the government of deceit, of not being absolutely honest. You've seen some of the reactions.
I have.
How do you answer to this charge that you have not been honest, that 3 or 4 days passed and you tried to sweep it all under the carpet?
Rahul, first of all, this is a very sensitive issue, and today there should not be two sides of this debate. There should be just one side, and that side should be standing with the armed forces, saluting their valor and trying to increase their manobal. But unfortunately, we see that the armed forces have to contend with the CCP from China and the CCP from India too, the Chinese Congress Party. But before I get to that, before you made this claim, you remember the Congress Party once peddled a fake narrative that there was a village inside Arunachal which the Chinese had taken over recently. Well, that narrative was so fake that it was from 1959 onwards it was with the Chinese. It had not gone recently, and that was a tweet put out by Rahul Gandhi and the Congress Party officially. This is the kind of propaganda they spread. You remember how they doubted the bravery in Galwan? 45 Chinese soldiers were killed. It was said by a Russian agency. It was said by an Australian agency. It was confirmed by everybody. The surgical strike took place. We had seen the kind of damage we had done. The Balakota strike took place. The damage that was done. It was announced by the armed forces, but it was questioned by whom? By the Congress Party. So I'm very circumspect to politicize this by bringing the Congress Party and giving them any kind of credibility. But let me tell you what has happened and what has transformed from 2014 onwards. You remember, Rahul, once upon a time, the defense minister got up in the parliament and said the best strategy was to not build any infrastructure along the LAC. Let me just tell you in the next 10 seconds what we have done over the last few years. We have created habitats of more than 22,000 for 22,000 troops along the concerned area. Also, this is being created along Arunachal and Sikkim. Storage facilities for 450 tanks, howitzers. Heavy excavators have been moved out there. 9 tunnels, which includes the Sela tunnel, has been created. 11 more tunnels are being planned along the entire LAC. Road projects including the Western Ladakh and the Zanskar Valley, the alternative routes have been created. The DSDBO road, class 70 specification road, is now being created. This is once upon a time you had a situation where not creating infrastructure was the best strategy. Today you have the Rafales also being put along the LAC, and we know who opposed the Rafale planes. Today our soldiers give a befitting response, whether it is the surgical strike, whether it is at Galwan, or whether it is the incident of December 9th. But why is it that some people constantly try to undermine our forces? These are the people who between 2004 to 14 were the ones who signed the MOU, who took Chinese funds into the RGF account, who allowed our economic interest to be hampered to the extent that 2,000% there was an increase in the trade deficit. They are the ones who allowed Demchok, Doomcheli, Dia Pangnak, Chapji Ghati to go away. Sham Saran has written in his book how 600 incursions took place. Every year there was 200 to 250 incursions. In the 1950s, I don't even want to go into the fact that 180 kilometers of road was built in Aksai Chin, the same Aksai Chin which Nehruji gave away because it was barren land. So, you know, nothing grows on the barren land, not in a blade of grass, and therefore it was willing to give away 38,000 square kilometers. When these people politicize the armed forces and they doubt the bravery of our forces, then the question needs to be answered. But today I want to ask the Congress Party or their spokespersons only one thing. Look at the difference. This is the Times of India report. And it's a report of 16th November, not very far off. India is going full steam ahead to reduce border infrastructure asymmetry with China. You remember after the Galwan clash, we held our guns and we constructed the bridge over the Galwan River. Today you have a government which is not majboor, it is majboot, and therefore whether it is the fortifications at the LAC, building the infrastructure, equipping our Jawans with the most modern equipment and giving a befitting response where it's required, that's the transformation that is taking place from a majboor sarkar to a majboot sarkar.
Okay, General Bakshi, let me bring you in on this. What does the action as detailed by the Raksha Mantri in Parliament today tell you about our preparedness, current levels of preparedness at our border? If you heard the BJP spokesperson, he says we have transformed the nature of the infrastructure we have at the border to reduce, and he cites the Times of India piece, to reduce the inequity that existed there. Would you be generally satisfied with what Shehzad Poonawala says?
Yes, Rahul. The fact of the matter is that huge strides have been made in the sphere of development of infrastructure on our Himalayan borders. The fact is, I am privy to the times when it was deemed inexpedient to make any roads in the border areas, leave the last 30-40 kilometers absolutely without roads, because on the specious plea that the Chinese would use them. The simple fact is that the road that leads from Tel Aviv to Damascus also leads from Damascus to Tel Aviv or vice versa, etc. So the fact of the matter is this foreclosed any offensive counter attack options on our part and reduced us to a defensive, pathetic defense, cowardly surrender of our own territory. All that has been rectified. The Chinese had made huge strides We still have to catch up. They have railways. 7 trains a day come to Lhasa today, and that means about 7 battalions a day can be built up there, almost a division a day. So the fact of the matter is we still have a lot of catching up to do, but huge strides have been made, and we have the S-400s deployed there now. We have the Rafales deployed there now. So, well, yes, we are well prepared. And the very fact is that when this attack was launched by about 300 plus Chinese on 250 odd boys of ours holding that particular feature, they got a rebuff. But, and there is a big but, I would now say the time has come for you to jettison the no weapons usage clause of your peace and tranquility accords. The simple fact is we are not supposed to use weapons. The Chinese have been using baseball bats with nails, barbed wire, taser guns, macer guns, etc., which are lethal. They have been throwing pointed, sharpened stones, which have been lethal. We've lost 20 lives already.
Okay.
We've had 6 more wounded, right? So I do not think this is called for the continuation of this clause,
okay,
because it has become defunct.
We'll talk a little bit about
this
General
is lethal force.
We'll talk about
against our men.
We'll talk about.
I'll just finish, Rahul. No, Rahul, I'll just finish. If you just give me
sure.
10 seconds more,
sure.
I'll just wind up. What I'd like to state is that we need to go back to the era of 1967 when General Rajnath Singh had passed clear orders that any soldier getting into kushti, wrestling, taekwondo with the Chinese, he would court-martial him. He said, you have been issued weapons and ammunition, use them to effect fire,
okay,
to stop any incursions into
General
our
Saab,
territory.
let's break this down, this conversation into
and
two.
It will be guarded the
Okay.
military way.
I understand that. You made that point. Let me just break this conversation up now into two halves. We'll come back to what India can do to escalate or impose costs on China so it doesn't resort to such adventurism in the future. And we'll get into that conversation with Mr. Ajay Shukla, Lieutenant General Narasimhan, as well as General Bakshi. We'll come to that. But I just want to quickly go back to Tehseen Poonawalla. Tehseen Poonawalla, you heard General Bakshi. He says, look, we're in a much better position. Can you say then, realistically, that this is the India of 1962? Some weakling country that is being run over by the Chinese, as people from your party seem to have suggested, and I have most of their quotes here. I mean, that seems to be the imputation. You look at Ejaz Ahmed of the RJD, for instance, your ally. You look at the Assam Congress bite. A lot of your leaders seem to be today suggesting that the Modi government is not being able to give China a befitting reply. On what basis are you making this claim?
Good evening, Rahul. Thank you for having me on your show. And at the onset, I want to thank General Bakshi and General Narasimhan for the services that they've led to our country. And we are safe because of people like them. And obviously, a salute to our valorous forces at the border who keep us safe. There are two issues that I want to raise. I hope you give me the time because it's a very sensitive issue. And I want to expose some of the lies that the BJP spokesperson made on your show. I'm quoting from Times of India. Before I'll expose the BJP and answer your question specifically. The BJP spokesperson on your show said, and to quote him, that the Congress lied about a village in Arunachal Pradesh. Now, I would like you to please see the Times of India report. It is the BJP MP Tapkir Gao and satellite images from Times of India of a second village in Arunachal Pradesh. This issue raised in Parliament was the BJP MP. So for the BJP to come here and blame the Congress for something their MP said, and Times of India has actually agreed with it with satellite images, I think is a lie. But please, sir, do not interrupt me. He also said that the highest trade deficit had happened during the UPA time. Just 2 days ago, the Ministry of Commerce has given the highest trade deficit with China is right now 73.71 billion. I'd be glad to forward you the Commerce Minister's reply. Having said that aside, I agree with what the BJP spokesperson said on your show. We all must be one. We all are one. These are our forces. In 67-68, like General Bakshi rightly said, India defeated China at Nathula and Chola. Indira Gandhi ji was Prime Minister. At Tawang, a place where China has always eyed it because it doesn't want the next Dalai Lama ever to come from Tawang because of the historical connection to the 6th Dalai Lama. In 1980, under Indira Gandhi and then under Rajiv Gandhi, we had Operation Falcon, Operation Checkerboard, and you know, Rahul, that the Chinese soldiers had to withdraw from the positions. Rajiv Gandhi declared Arunachal Pradesh a state and had to withdraw. So India's always, after 62, held its own against China. China's had to withdraw not once but twice, suffered a bloody nose, and no government, whether it is Congress or BJP, UP or NDA, after 62 has given an inch of land to China. What is the issue that the opposition is raising? May I please come to that, and I will end here. The issue that the opposition is raising, very humbly, if the BJP spokesperson can answer. This clash happened on the 9th. What was the Prime Minister then celebrating between the 9th and the 12th? Why was he in a celebratory mood when this clash happened? Number one. Number two, Parliament was in session. The Honorable Prime Minister and the Most Honorable Defence Minister should have briefed Parliament. Ultimately, unlike China, a totalitarian state, we are a democracy. Lastly, if the Honorable Prime Minister in his wisdom thought, and I give that to him, that this was not the time to make it public in Parliament, could not the Honorable Defence Minister and the NSA call up the opposition leaders and tell them secretly over the phone what has happened? Ultimately, Rahul, as I end, you will remember when the border issue with Bangladesh was happening, we were swapping land, and Manmohan Singh ji was Prime Minister. Rajnath Singh ji one day called up Manmohan Singh ji and said, I want a briefing. The IB chief was immediately sent to Rajnath Singh ji's house. Why couldn't these precedents have been set? One last line. Today, when the Honorable Defence Minister is speaking, I don't expect the Honorable Prime Minister to speak, but couldn't the Prime Minister just be seated next to him to give a message of solidarity? Ultimately, even our Prime Minister, who we all respect, is answerable to Parliament. That's all we are raising.
Okay, well, there have been 1,025 Chinese transgressions reported from 2016 to 2018. This is government data. Now,
1,300 during NDA time, 600 during UPA time.
So let me just finish. During each of these transgressions, India didn't go into a stage of mourning. No one went and said that, oh, we must not do this, we must not do that, let's just quickly sit down and let's give lengthy explanations. The point is...
May I answer that? May I just answer that? No, just 10 seconds, let me answer that. Just answer
You're not letting me finish.
No, please, sir, I know what you're going to
please,
you don't
know what I'm going to say. If you knew what I was going to say...
But you do allow me to answer that.
Of course I will, but
10
let me
seconds.
just finish.
Yes.
Let me just finish.
Sure.
All I'm trying to get at is, are we overly trivializing this issue by making it part of the normal calculus of politics? Number one, and that's a question I'll ask of Ajay Shukla also. I'll ask of the member of the NSAB, Lieutenant General Narasimhan also. So let me just very quickly. Let me just very quickly.
Reply to that in 10 seconds.
Just give me a second. I haven't finished. Okay. Please, I haven't finished. Please. All I'm saying is that the Chinese are committed to trying to destabilize us at our borders. There is no border, first of all. Yes. There is a LAC. It is a contested claim line. And there are many times when Indian forces have also gone across. It's not, and I heard that from one of our top former army chiefs who was speaking on a show right before this, saying that this is pretty much part and parcel of what has been happening over the LAC for a long period of time. So, very quickly,
I'll answer.
How is this so different from what happens the 1,000 and odd times in just the last few years?
Extremely different, sir.
Okay.
Two answers for your first question. 1,200 odd times during NDA times and 600 odd times during UPA times. I'm not comparing and saying who's better. Please don't get me wrong. But every time there was a transgression during UPA times, and Rahul, you've covered, you're a senior journalist, every time the late Mrs. Sushma Swaraj ji or the late Arun Jaitley ji demanded accountability in Parliament. You may like the UPA, you may not like, the accountability was given each of those 600 times.
Okay, but the Raksha Mantri has responded.
Sir, may I please, the
now,
second
Rahul,
part.
I think it should not become a monologue.
No,
I'll respond to it. You respond when your time comes.
He's allowed me. He's allowed me.
Let's get him on the first part.
Now, look, Rahul, let us, first of all, I'm touched by the affection shown for General Bakshi by Tehseen Poonawalla. His senior spokespersons label them as Sadak Ka Gunda. His senior spokespersons label them as Khoon Ki Dalali and Farzical Strike. So I'm very glad that at least Tehseen has realized that he has come here to defend those bunch of anti-nationals who call the army chief and a patriot Sadak Ka Gunda. I'm glad Tehseen has not walked that path. Tehseen should also start reading a little bit more, because the senior spokespersons, when they tweeted about this lost village in Arunachal Pradesh, that same article of a ragtag organization that I don't even consider to be a media organization, but nonetheless they had quoted it, had in its own report in the first paragraph said that in 1959 onwards this had been basically under the Chinese control, but they did not read the full article also. But that's how Tehseen Poonawalla and his ecosystem behaves, because Tehseen Poonawalla has obviously not read the fact that today the trade deficit is not $73 billion, it's $55 billion. They left it at $36 billion, and from $1 to $36 billion is 2,000%, and from $36 billion to $55 billion is a 42%. So that is the difference, but Tehseen Poonawalla will not tell you the fact. He will also not tell you that he's saying that we should trust the opposition leaders. Rahul, would you trust a leader who has a MOU and money and consideration has been paid on behalf of that MOU to that party? Would you trust them? Can you trust such a person? Well, I asked Tehseen, why don't you disclose the contents of that MOU?
Okay, this MOU business.
When the Doklam crisis happened, they were sitting and chatting with the Chinese ambassador, and it was Times Now and other organizations that put it out. Then they came out and said, yes, indeed, we were having this conversation.
Let's not go down this MOU. One minute. 1 second, please. Let's not go down this MOU rabbit hole, because you see, there have been meetings between RSS delegations and the CCP in 2009. We know this.
Of course there have been meetings.
Now, people can ask you what was happening in those meetings.
It is in public domain.
Why did Nitin Gadkari visit
domain.
China? In 1 second.
I'll
Sir, 1
that.
second. No,
Yes.
no, let's not lose ourselves. I don't even want to go down. I find this very trivial. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying that
I find this business of
it
what
is very
MOU
trivial.
Anyhow,
it is very trivial.
I mean, why did
Rahul,
why did the
see,
BJP
I did
send
not speak
delegation
about
of
this in my
MPs in
opening
2014?
statement.
That's what I'm saying. Let's just
I
keep
did
it
not
up.
open
I
my
want to get
statement
back
with this.
to more
Rahul,
more
on more substantive issues. The reason I did not bring this up, I brought it up in a response to Tehseen Poonawalla, saying that when a real life situation is happening, that time he wants the entire army infrastructure to call up Rahul Gandhi and tell Rahul Gandhi, sir, are you in Bharat Jodo?
Yes.
Sir, please understand this is happening. What do we do, sir?
I agree.
You think the army paraphernalia should be
I just want to make one thing very clear. No, 1 second, please,
second.
gentlemen. Again, I wanted to state the law. So please, I will never condone the so-called visit of Rahul Gandhi to the Chinese ambassador at a time when situation was extremely sensitively placed with regards to Doklam. That perhaps was a political misstep. Optically, it sent out the wrong signals. But let's just park all those issues aside for a few moments. I want to bring in Ajay Shukla. Mr. Shukla, look, let's get back to the issues, the most substantive ones. When the opposition says, for example, Laal Aankh Dikha Do. Now, what does it mean exactly? What does it want India to do? Is it being realistic or rhetorically trivializing the nature of the equation we have with China? We know there is an inequity in that equation, both. If you talk about the number of nuclear devices, so on and so forth, as well as conventional capability, there is a mismatch. Let's not run away from that. We might be trying to make our way in trying to, come to some sort of a parity, but there is a mismatch. So when it says PM didn't show Laal Aankh to, Xi when he met Xi in the sidelines of the conference, the G20 conference, what exactly did the opposition want? The Prime Minister to slap Xi, catch him by the collar? I'm not understanding this, because for me, the use of this term, metaphoric or otherwise, I don't think it's metaphoric, because they go on about it. What exactly do they think either the Indian Army should have done in the current situation, or the Prime Minister should have done when he came across Mr. Xi? Tripped him?
Well, I would imagine, and frankly, I don't know what was in the Congress spokesperson's mind when he made these statements about Aankhein Laal Aankhein Dikha Do Chin ke president ko. But I presume, and this is I could be entirely wrong here, that what he meant was that don't shake hands with President Xi Jinping, maintain an aloof body sort of posture with the Chinese president. I'm assuming over here. I frankly don't know, but certainly what I will voice an opinion on, and what I think you will agree with me, is that after the events of 2020 and 2021 on the eastern Ladakh border,
there certainly should not have been an element of friendliness by the Indian Prime Minister to the Chinese leader. Would anyone sort of disagree with that? I just think that it was an opportunity for India to voice its sort of almost anger, disdain, disgust, and I'm sad to say that maybe they didn't take that opportunity. So this again, I'll just close with one statement that I assume that this is what the what the Congress Party spokesperson was saying.
Well, I don't understand this, Mr. Shukla, because then Sonia should not have signed an MOU so publicly with Xi, because it's not as if India's relationship with China has had some golden period. Even at that time, there was transgressions. So, I mean, as I was saying, are we going to go back into trivializing this? Are you going to say that what Xi did when he petulantly tried to tick off Trudeau was very statesmanlike? Would you like our Prime Minister to behave like a pit bull in international gatherings? Go and bite people, collar them. Don't you think it sort of shows that there is a certain truculence and a sort of idiotic way of conducting diplomacy?
I would
What would you do?
I would answer you with one question. I tell you what I'd do. I would answer one question. I would answer your question first, and that is to say that if you're signing an MOU with a country, or you're signing a peace treaty with a country, or a border conduct confidence building measures, you are not laying yourself open to that person. You are in fact recreating conditions where deaths don't take place, clashes don't take place, and that I think is legitimate to do with a country.
No, I can understand if a Prime Minister of a country was signing a document with the President of another country, but when a person who is the chairman of the NSAB, who is the head of a political party, is sitting and signing an MOU, who is she? What capacity is she signing this MOU? With a sovereign head. At that time, she was holding a very big position. So either Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister or Sonia Gandhi was Super PM. How can there be a treaty? Who is Sonia Gandhi to speak for India?
You're wrong. You're wrong, Rahul.
He's saying so?
Rahul,
No. What is he
you are
saying?
wrong in assuming that there is only the Prime Minister and the rest of the opposition party functionaries don't exist. That is absolutely incorrect.
Oh, so Sonia Gandhi was
in the opposition
a major official figure.
Role to play has.
This is a bit. This doesn't sound quite right.
I think it sounds exactly right.
It's a bit like someone. Okay, it's a bit like.
Sounds exactly right, Rahul. You see,
right now.
You see,
Rahul.
now may I come?
Let him finish.
Okay, let him
Rahul
finish.
Shivshankar, if you are saying, if you are saying that there is no space in diplomacy for expression of anger and expression of national disgust at the conduct of another country, you're simply wrong. There absolutely is. There is body language. There are issues like should you shake hands, should you not. There are issues like
So you want our Prime Minister to behave like Gaddafi, and you want him to behave like
language.
Like that.
It is the language.
No, you want him to behave like Gaddafi on an international stage.
I don't know how much you know about Gaddafi's behavior.
I think otherwise he'll go on and on. But let me come in. Let me come in, Rahul. Please I request your indulgence.
1 second.
The Prime Minister's approach to Xi Jinping.
Okay.
So Rahul, let me get this right. The Prime Minister's biggest sin is that his body language was diplomatic at the Bali event, but here you have an extra constitutional treaty being signed. 1 second, now please don't interrupt. Extra constitutional treaty being signed, the contents of which they will not disclose, come what may, even if somebody approaches the court. And at the time, 600 incursions took place, not according to me, according to Shamsaran. According to Shamsaran, 640 square kilometers was occupied. Demchok, Doomcheri, Tiapangna, Chabjigati, all were taken over. At that point of time, A.K. Antony very diplomatically stands up in parliament and says, we won't build any infrastructure. And this great MOU, this great great document signed between Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi and Xi Jinping out of any expression of anger, disgust whatsoever is not torn apart and thrown aside. But Prime Minister Modi's fault is that at Bali he was diplomatic. You see the double standards here?
General Bakshi, and one second, General Narasimhan, let me bring you in. General Narasimhan, now we are being told that the Prime Minister should have said, Mr. Xi, I don't want to shake your hand. Please be banished from my sight. Do you think that would have behoved the stature of a country like India? I just want to ask you.
That's a complete...
No, but that's what you said,
misrepresentation of what I said and a complete trivialization of what I said. We never talked about banishing anyone from a country.
You said just don't.
We never talked about, you know,
so what would have happened in the next few months, in about 9 or 10 months, India is going to host the G20 summit here. So should we not give permission to Xi to come to India? What should we not do? Ajay Shukla, to take your logic forward, if you can't shake hands with the man, you shouldn't even...
You should, I'll tell you what you should not do.
Right.
You should not be subservient towards him in body language. You should not shake hands with him when he's got
should you have an MOU with him?
Still in some places.
Should you have an MOU with him?
You need to express...
Should you have an MOU with him?
You need to...
Should you have an MOU with him?
Let me bring out that photograph where the MOU was signed. Nizam bhai, can we bring out that photograph, please, of the MOU?
You should have an MOU
the video,
with
in
him.
fact.
Maybe you should not serve Xi dinner when he comes to India. That's what I think Ajay Shukla is saying. A strong, befitting response would be to not give dinner to Xi at the hotel room. I think that would be a strong message. But to have an MOU with him. Let's have an MOU with him.
Okay, well, that's Rahul Gandhi with the Chinese ambassador.
If you go back and listen to the show, the show is repeated at night. You should go and watch yourself.
Reality every day.
Okay, one second. Viewers, just look at the pictures on your screen.
I don't think you need to be so trivial.
I think we should start reading articles to understand the definition of trivial.
Okay, one second. Let's not make this person gentleman, please.
I'm not.
One second.
Maybe you should.
Yeah.
Okay,
maybe you really should.
Okay, one second.
I have better...
Okay, gentlemen, please. Gentlemen, look at the pictures on your screen. This is Rahul Gandhi at the height of the Doklam crisis, meeting the Chinese. Now, what is he doing there? He's not pulling at the tie of the Chinese to strangle him. He's shaking his hand. He's smiling.
Very happy.
There is Rahul Gandhi signing. And look who's standing and looking over the shoulder. That is Xi Jinping. There is also Mr. Anand Sharma, I think, to the right of Sonia Gandhi.
Yeah.
And they're both looking there. And this is not a governmental agreement. This is CCP and Congress. So, I mean, let's apply the same yardsticks for once before we accuse each other of trivializing this, that. If that moment was being trivialized by a leadership of one party, then, well, you can apply that equitably to Mr. Modi. But he represents the Union of India when he's out there. General Bakshi, am I wrong or am I right?
Exactly.
What should the Prime Minister do? He's in a multilateral forum. It's not as if he's having a conversation with Xi. The man is approaching him, he's approaching him. They shake hands.
That's exactly.
They say hello to each other, and that's it.
That makes his job a lot easier. He should have gone and shaken some other hands rather than those of Xi Jinping.
But he did. He shook everyone's hand. In fact, he hugged other people. Should I show you the pictures? General Bakshi, what exactly is Ajay Shukla trying to say? I'm lost here.
Rahul, actually generals are the patently wrong people to ask for the subtleties of diplomatic body language. But I thought there are occasions when I think what is being referred to is a certain amount of reserve. And I did think the Prime Minister showed that. I don't think he was overly effusive with Xi Jinping, but I would rather like to focus on the issue that you raised, and I thought that was far more consequential as to how we should react.
So let me bring in General Narasimhan also. He's been very quiet.
As a
yes,
soldier,
sir. Both of you. I'll bring you both in. Let me first get in General Narasimhan on that point, and then I'll come right back to you, General Saab, because I really want to hear your views also. So, General Narasimhan,
thank you.
Are we doing? Look, if you hear the narrative that is being spun by the opposition, and they're within their rights to do this. This is a democracy. You would believe that not enough is being done, that the Prime Minister is bending over backwards, he's not showing la langue, that he is not doing enough to escalate the costs on China. What really is your view on this charge that is being made? General Narasimhan.
Right. Rahul, thanks for getting me on this show. I've been listening quite patiently to all the exchanges that have been taking place. I think we need not actually get into the modalities of what the PM does or otherwise. The reason for that is very simple. Even that particular handshake that you're seeing on the screen at this point in time, it is all well discussed and planned at a very higher level, keeping in mind various issues that are in front of us and how we need to deal with these issues. So I think we are actually not doing the correct thing by discussing this in this kind of a forum. Let us leave it to the high officers or the people who are holding it to decide how they need to deal with these issues. Questions can be asked. I mean, I'm with the system basically because it is a democracy. Questions will be asked. I understand that, but I think we need to keep certain things above discussion, and I think this is one of them that needs to be kept. That is number one. Number two. When these issues are being discussed, look at the body language, what was being talked about. I don't think there was any sense of, bowing down or any sense of mollycoddling or anything like that. It was with dignity and it was with the right place in mind and with the right thing in mind. It was not a very long kind of a conversation. It was a very short conversation. And look at the body language. It doesn't show any kind of submissiveness or anything like that. It is a correct way to deal with these things. I think that is the way to look at it. That is what I would like to say about this.
Okay, General Bakshi.
Waiting for some time.
Okay, yeah. What is the point?
On the MOU thing, I believe very.
Oh God, are we going to discuss this?
No, I want to, sir. You have to allow me to raise a counter issue because the BJP has done it, and I will not allow them to tarnish Mrs. Gandhi's image. I'm sorry, sir. So please allow me, and do allow me, and trying to ask the BJP two simple questions. But before that, I want to make a disclosure on your show. The BJP spokesperson again lied on your show. The trade deficit with China was 73.31 billion, not 50 billion. It's 51.50 billion this year until October. From April to October, so it'll exceed 73 billion. That's the lies the BJP peddles on a national TV. But sir, you want to ask about the MOU, please, by all means ahead. How much money has the BJP received from the overseas friends of BJP China via Raju Sabnani? Was Raju Sabnani arrested, yes or no, for terror charges? Did Prime Minister Vajpayee send a diplomat to save him? And is he raising funds? Did he raise funds for Prime Minister Modi? You want answers on MOU? I think you should ask. Now, please answer on Raju Sabnani, and please answer how much funds you got. I want you today to tell the world how much funds you got.
So you are acknowledging that the funds that came into the RGF from the Chinese embassy and the Chinese government is wrong?
Sir, I am saying you have all rights to ask questions. Now you please answer my question.
Now you see,
was
double
Raju Sabnani arrested on terror?
You have answered your question. I think your quiet, your hypocritical silence on that answers everything. Now let me see. Rahul, just see the hypocrisy.
One second. I think I'd like to step in here. I want to bring in General Saab. I just want to step in.
Can I just point out one short hypocrisy?
If the money was such a factor, viewers, would Modi have moved trade sanctions against China?
Exactly, that's what
punished some of the Chinese big majors from doing business in this country? Would we have had a situation, viewers, where our army was standing up and blooding the nose, putting their own lives on the line to take down China? Would we be moving resolutions against China in the United Nations? Would we be trying to isolate China on important critical issues by stealing business, if one were to use the word, from the Chinese? Look, let's get a bit real. 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 Let's talk about the more substantive issues here. I can't understand what the opposition wants the Modi government to do. Launch a nuclear missile, send troops into China, take over. What is it, General Saab?
Can I just add something here?
Can you explain? What should be done? Where is the government falling short of the expectations of the opposition?
Rahul, I would like to, I'd like to put my 10 pennies worth here. You see, the simple fact of the matter is that in every mature democracy, there is a bipartisan consensus on issues of national security, is my oft-repeated statement. But the fact of the matter is, on this discussion itself, we've been forced to spend far more time and attention onto the acrimony between the two political outfits rather than between India and China. And I think if we are now, overdoing this particular facet, I think we need to focus on more substantive issues when it is a question of India and China. That has receded into the background today, and not only on your channel but on most channels. The discussion is inane. I'm sorry, because it is between two political outfits slugging it out. Precisely. Much more than they would slug it out with the adversary country. And I think that is now reaching a level where I think the people of India are now a bit sick to the gills.
Right. So, General, what should we be doing? What should we be doing?
We are not prepared to talk against the Chinese. Focusing on more substantive issues about the Chinese, how do we deal with the Chinese, what exactly is the problem? And if you permit me, Rahul, I'd like to say that as a soldier, the fact of the matter is, China wants a digression from its internal problems, COVID, Taiwan, economy. Well, it chooses whom? It chooses us. It chooses us. Does that tell us something? We need to now look at deterrence. We need to now look at trying to raise costs and consequences for China's churlish behavior. It cannot continue on and on forever. Okay. 2.5 years we've suffered it in Ladakh, right? We made one very substantive step backwards. We sort of seized the initiative in the Kailash range. We were quick to give it up, right? And now the Chinese are going to repeat ad nauseum these provocations. You have to come to a clear-cut decision. Are these par for the course? Do we get pushed around? Or of course we will give it back. Our boys will give it back at whatever level they are asked to circumscribe their response to, right? But the fact of the matter is, I think we need to harken back to what we did in '67.
Okay.
Learn very pertinent.
General Narasimhan, should we hark back to what we did in '67?
Kinetic just once. We will have peace for the next at least 20 years.
Okay, go kinetic. We'll have peace for the next 20 years. General Narasimhan.
Because the costs and consequences would have been outlined.
Okay. Do what we did against Pakistan.
No, 67 is China.
No, I'm talking about Pakistan now.
Listen, I think we are stretching these things a little too far. I think we need to understand the correct kind of position that we have with China. That is number one. Number two, let us not keep quoting Nathula. Nathula was one incident. It was very restricted to one particular post. So if you were to expand it, you will have different consequences. So what you need to do is quietly build your capabilities, not actually go tom-tomming about it to town. Quietly build your capabilities, build your deterrence, build your infrastructure, build your indigenization capability and manufacturing capability within the country, make ourselves stronger. That is something that we need to be looking at this point in time. And if we can do that, I'm a firm believer that is being done at this point in time. And I think that is the way to go. We need to quietly build our capabilities, and there's no harm in borrowing that strategy of Deng Xiaoping. Hide your capabilities and bide your time is something that we need to follow for some time to come, till the time we build our capabilities and deter China to the fullest extent.
Okay, General Bakshi, respond please to General Narasimhan.
I have the greatest of regards for General Narasimhan's acumen and experience. All that I would like to point out is Nathula was not an isolated incident. There was also Chola, there was also incidents at Yatla, right? I was there immediately in the aftermath of most of these incidents. We had a series of these border skirmishes where we were confined to using our fists, our boots and butts and have wrestling and taekwondo matches. When General Sagat Singh took charge in Nathula, in East Sikkim in 17 Div, his first orders were, I will court-martial any Jawan, any soldier who engages in these kind of shenanigans with the Chinese. You have been issued weapons, you have been issued ammunition, fire for effect. If it is to safeguard the sovereignty of your country, the territorial integrity of your country, fire for effect. And there was fire opened at Chola. An MVC was given to the commanding officer there, who happened to be from my regiment, Narasimhan. That was Mahel Singh, Galwan Mahel Singh. And there were a couple of VRCs that were given in Chola. I'm not talking of Nathula.
Okay.
And Nathula, of course,
Can I just come in for 30
we had a major
General
clash,
Narasimhan responding to
the
you.
estimate that time was 750
General Saab,
casualties.
listen to General Narasimhan. Yes.
50
just one
casualties
second.
killed and wounded.
Yeah. Okay. One second. Let him speak, please.
I have full respect for General Bakshi. I commanded the 63 Brigade. I am aware of what happened in Nathula, what happened in Chola. I also commanded the 17th Division. So I am aware exactly as to what happened. But again, please understand, today is not the India of 62, 67. Today is not the China of 67. We are in different time zones. We are in different capability zones. We have to keep a lot of things in mind. So that is the point I was trying to say. It is not that Nathula, Chola, Yakla are all in the same sector. It is in the same battalion sector at that time, now in the same brigade sector. I mean, I am aware of all that.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is we need to hide our capabilities and bide our time.
Contemporary discussion. Now look, I'm glad that at that time the opposition did not say Nathula mein body bags dikhao. That is the fundamental difference, and let me tell you what we've been doing. We've imposed a strategic cost, whether it's creating the LAC infrastructure, which AK Antony, the defense minister, says was not required. We imposed an economic cost. They were out of 5G. The apps were banned. We pushed them outside the phone market. We've taken action on Chinese companies. We've pushed them out of the highway projects. We've then taken diplomatic action. We've isolated them using the Quad. We've isolated them using other international mechanisms. And these are the costs that we've imposed on them. And we are imposing a military cost, whether it's at Galwan or whether it is now. So this is the fundamental transformation. You once had a government which said, Sonia ji, can we act on Pakistan? They've done 2611. Sonia ji said no. And therefore we gave them MFN status. And today you have an armed forces that does a surgical strike, a Balakot, and that's the difference.
The conversation around India's response and the suitability of it will continue. Let me tell you. I'm going to stop here. News are coming up. Stay tuned.